Hello and welcome to another imperfectly perfect, perfectly imperfect conversation for the Flourishing Education podcast. Today, I'm delighted to welcome my new guest, Dr. Maddi Popoola. A very warm welcome to the podcast, Maddi.
Oh, hello, and thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Yes, wonderful. So, sometimes I've met my guests beforehand, sometimes I haven't. So in your case, Maddie, I just reached out to you via LinkedIn because I was really impressed by your profile. So we've not really spoken. So I'm like,
No. Yeah, it's so nice to meet you.
yeah, you too. So could we start with the first question I always ask all of my guests, which is who are you, sir? I've given the guest, your guest, you're the guest and your name, but where are you in the world? What's been your journey into education so far?
I mean, I'm based in Nottingham, but I haven't always been. My journey, I guess, started with, so I did my undergraduate degree, at the University of Derby, which was in 2001, circa. Um, so I graduated with a degree in creative therapy. So I've always kind of been really interested in working with children and young people, from a kind of therapeutic perspective, I guess. And then when I graduated, I just so happened to get a job in a secondary school, in Nottingham City, and it was a challenging school at the time. I remember my first year there, we were in porta cabins because the school had been burnt down by students. So we were working in porta cabins, but then we got this, this beautiful new building. I stayed there for a little while. So my role there was pastoral, and I was doing learning mentor type work with students with social and emotional mental health difficulties. So I stayed there for I think maybe a couple of years, and then I went on to doing some work with children in a pupil referral unit, had been excluded from mainstream school. And then from there, I then went into, because that was all with secondary age pupils. And I thought I was kind of at a point where I thought I need to also get some experience of working with younger children. So I went into work for primary school, but that was quite short-lived because then I made quite a big move and went into work in Shanghai in China. This is all relevant, I promise.
Sorry, it's
Because,
very
sorry, long
important.
story.
Yeah,
I
no,
promise
it's just, yeah, it's
yeah,
really important.
it's all relevant. Because I guess it's thinking about my experience, and I guess when we're thinking about reimagining education and kind of different ideas, I think certainly working internationally opened my eyes to different ways of doing things with learning and with education. And I spent 3 years in an international school in Shanghai, China, where we taught, it was a primary school. We taught the primary years program as part of the International Baccalaureate. And it was an inquiry-based learning program. So, because of my art background, I was teaching art, which was amazing, to primary school children through an inquiry-based learning program. I was exposed to, therefore, learning that it was so skills based, and interest based for children rather than knowledge based in terms of the curriculum. And children flourished. They flourished. We had children who were engaged and interested in their learning, who would come up with an idea, follow that idea through, through various different means of investigation. And then they would present that back in loads of different ways and build, therefore, many, many different skills in presenting and oracy skills. Sometimes in writing, sometimes collage, sometimes through creative means, and they had choice and autonomy in how they did that. So, I think that experience really kind of opened my eyes to, I guess, different ways of doing things. And then I came back to the UK, and I think rather than pursuing my kind of career within education settings, I kind of moved more into the mental health and therapeutic side of things at first. Um, I started doing a master's degree in psychotherapy, but stopped that when I got pregnant with my oldest child, who's now 14. I'm saying that makes me feel very old. But yeah, I'm a mum of two, so I'm a 14-year-old and a 5-year-old. But I think following having my first child, I kind of knew that, I'm really interested in education, new ideas in education, but I'm also very interested in kind of psychology, mental health. So that kind of has led me down the path of becoming an educational psychologist. And I trained to be an ed psych 2015 to 18, and then since then have worked as an educational psychologist, been working in consultation with lots of different in school settings, and also done lots of work managing the mental health support teams in Nottingham City and working with CAMS as well. So I've got a variety of experience, very kind of, I suppose, mental health and education based, but right now I'm very much in pursuit of I suppose really understanding how we can help schools to build really, really effective, meaningful new systems where children really feel like they belong in schools, and where they feel included for everyone in a mainstream school environment.
Amazing. And wow, what a journey.
Yeah, yeah, I guess it has. I think I've not said that out loud for quite a long time, for quite a long time. I think when you say it out loud, like you can kind of see how, you develop your
Yeah.
interests, can't you? And
Yeah.
yeah, it's a windy road, but I think now I've kind of got to where my real passion is. And then obviously the book Reimagining Education, which I think you've probably seen on my profile and why you contacted me, was it's a labour of love, really. It was kind of everything that I feel I bang on about all the time to school. Just all in one place in a nice, tidy little book with a nice cover.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful. Your book looks really beautiful. And we'll put the link so that the listeners can have a look at it if they
Yeah,
can.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can we linger maybe a little bit on the book and
Yeah,
the
sure.
imaginings of education? So what I've heard on your journey and in the what I call meandering, like
Mm,
is perhaps, moving from you describe your first school as being a difficult school, inverted commas, right? Like challenging school, and then working in a pupil referral unit, which is obviously where the young people who have been asked to leave education end up, right? Very often. I've got colleagues, I'm doing a PhD in the School of Education at the University of Bristol, so I've got colleagues who are looking at these young people in particular, and often that's referred as the funnel from, from school to often
prison. Mm.
prison, right? So all of that is quite like the language around all of this is very negative, right? And then the way you described your experience in Shanghai, that felt so like, I don't know, the way
Mm,
your energy just sort of like shifted, right?
mm.
And your beautiful book. So I don't know, I'm just sharing what I sort of like sense in the
Yeah, that's interesting.
yeah.
That's an interesting reflection in itself, isn't it? I guess. I guess I've spent a lot of the time, I think, working with schools because of the system that we're working in. And I think it's not about this is what I stress this all the time. It's not about the people working in the system. The people working in our education system are incredible. They all want the best for children and young people. Nobody gets into working in education if they don't want that. And I truly believe in those individuals. The problem that we have is that we are all working within a system and an accountability system, and within the restraints of a curriculum that is outdated. It's irrelevant to most children and young people, and I think it has been for a long time. I mean, my daughter's 14, she's in year 9. I look at what she's doing, and she's learning it's the same as what I was doing and learning, and yet there's 30 years between us. Um, something has not caught up in terms of, and it's the hilarious thing is it's not even matched to what we now know through neuroscience, neurodevelopment with children's, the way children learn and their cognitive development over time. So not only is it not matched in terms of knowledge and the richness in terms of the technological revolution, that was an imperfectly perfect word, um, but it's also not matched scientifically to the brain development of a child or to what we know about. I talk about this quite a lot in the book about theories around motivation, for example, like why we want to do the things that we want to do. And we strip children of motivation as they go through our education system rather than feeding it to them. Um, I think something that I talked a bit about in my experience in China was the autonomy within learning. And that's a huge, huge problem, I think, particularly in our secondary or high school system, is that we give children so little choice over how and what they're learning, and their questions don't feel important. And I think if that doesn't feel important, what motivation do you have to turn up every day?
And yeah, I completely resonate and echo so much of. So I'm currently doing my field work for my PhD,
Mm,
and the PhD is working in a secondary school, working with young people, exploring how do we co-create an enabling environment so all can flourish is the question we're asking. Um, and that what you've just said echoes absolutely what the young people are saying. Um,
yeah,
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 yeah, completely. And what I've written previously, which is around, I really believe we are lifelong, life wide, life deep learners. We also curious, and that stripping of the like,
curiosity. Yeah,
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 curiosity. I remember when my eldest, who's now 18, stopped asking why.
mm,
And it really, like, it was quite upsetting, like how suddenly
mm,
the questions of, but why, mummy, mum,
mm,
why, then stopped. Um, so yeah, it's quite sad, isn't it? And like particularly because you sort of like back to what you were saying about the curriculum, that also young people have in their pockets these phones and they've got
yeah.
access to
They
so
have access to knowledge. They don't need knowledge. We have access that we need the ignition, don't we? We need the curiosity, we need the questions, we need the interest in us as a human and what our questions are. I have a friend who's the teacher, and um she works in a school locally, and she was saying that I think it was like a year 8 lesson. I think they have a little bit more autonomy as teachers at that point as to what they can teach. But she asked her class to so they were talking about just different religions, and she asked the class to go away and find out as much as they could, and come back with their questions about any religion. They could choose one. So not only did they have autonomy in which one they could choose, but they also then had autonomy about what question they wanted to ask. And she was showing me a video of the classroom, because they came back and they were writing their questions down on paper and then sticking them all up on the wall. And the walls were absolutely covered in questions. And then they worked on a big project. I'm like, how do we find out? How do we know? And that's not necessarily even just using Google or using AI. How can we speak to someone who's had that experience? How can we, understand that from that person's perspective? And you think about all the things that you could learn through that more kind of questioning model, and yet we're doing the opposite, and it is really sad. And I think um, when I think about children that have been excluded from school as well, um, I would say sort of 8 to 9 times out of 10, we're talking about either children who are neurodiverse, so they don't fit the mold, the square pegs in round holes, or they're children who have experienced significant trauma in their lives and are then you know, not fitting into the kind of social model that we've created as well in schools. And then what do? We tell them to get out, you know,
The
instead of,
damage that does, right? Because once you've been told you don't belong here,
yeah,
then
yeah,
that's the story you just keep,
it snowballs.
yeah,
Yeah,
you keep
yeah,
repeating, right? Like it's, I don't belong here. Um,
yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah. I'm not good enough. That's what
yeah.
a lot of children
Yeah.
will develop that. Like, yeah, I'm naughty, like you said, all those narratives. I mean, I was you have to think back to yourself, don't you? Because you have to think, and when I put a LinkedIn post out the other day, one of the people commented back around this idea of belonging and what does it mean? Where does it start? How do you know? And I think you have to think about yourself, don't you? You have to think about your own sense of that feeling and what that means so that you can truly then understand how to co-create that for
Mm.
others.
Mm.
And one of the things that I was thinking about is the narrative and the language that you're given through particularly your teenagers, where you are building your sense of who I am. You know, that's when we know children are looking outwards instead of
Mm.
within the family unit, aren't they? To see who am I, who am I like, what do I like, who are my people? And they're asking all those questions. And I think when you're in school, you do remember the things that teachers say to you and about you. You do internalize those comments about you're good at that, or if it's art or if it's music or if it's one of the creatives, oh, you're that's a beautiful piece of work, or do you know those, and you internalize those things.
Rubbish at that. You're not
You're not
good.
very, yeah, how
Yeah.
many children do say I'm not very good at maths, I'm rubbish
Yeah.
at maths? How many of us have that
Yeah.
internal construct
Yeah.
of like we're not very good at numbers, it
Yeah.
scares us, we're not good at math? Why?
And often there's that dichotomy, right? Because I'm a linguist, so I'm a
Mm,
recovering language teacher.
mm,
And and I have this narrative that I'm rubbish at maths because I was really good at languages.
yeah, one or the other.
And it
Mm,
can't be both, right? Very often in our
mm.
system.
Yeah, and I mean, what does good mean as well? That's the
Exactly.
other thing. Like we use these words all the time, just flippantly. You're good at that. You're brilliant at that. Like, well, what does that mean? Because actually, if even maths as a subject, I mean, first of all, the way it's taught, how irrelevant most of it to to you as a even when I was at school, I'm thinking, wow, on earth am I learning this? When am I ever going to use this again? There's ways to teach maths, I think, that will be a lot more engaging because we do use it every day. And there are many, many aspects of life, world, in which we need to understand and know maths, economics, finance, business, managing money, all of those kind of things
That
that
would
we
be
don't.
more useful, right?
Imagine how useful that would be. Yeah, gosh, definitely. Definitely for my child who thinks it just grows on trees, that's for sure. Um,
But of course, we would be so much more empowered in that sense, right? Like in terms of, so I was really struck by one thing you mentioned, when you were speaking around like how teenagers. So I love teenagers, and like all of
mm,
my career, I've been really lucky and privileged that I've taught for nurseries, languages in nurseries, all the way to sort of like higher education. Um, but teenagers for me they're really misunderstood, I think.
yeah,
And I think to some degree we're scared of them as adults. Like we don't understand them and we're scared of them. And I also think that in terms of psychology, there's been a lot of research around the developmental, like educational and developmental psychology. So we know a lot about like the childhood development, but actually the teenage years and the identity development is so fuzzier. Do you feel that's true?
yeah. I think I think the mind of a teenager is always going to be a mystery. Um, um, I agree with you. I think I love working with teenagers, and I think having worked with both primary and little ones and teenagers, I agree. I think there is less understanding of them, and I don't know if it's less. I'll be honest, I don't have the breadth of knowledge to know about what research has been done on sort of infancy, and then adolescence, I guess, in terms of neuroscience. But I think what I do notice is that what we do know about teenagers, it's kind of not empathized with in the same way because they're big
Yeah.
and they're not very nice. And
Yeah.
they, or not, do you know, they don't speak how they're not cute anymore. They
Mm,
don't speak
mm,
very nice. They can be very much interpreted as being rude
yeah.
or aggressive or,
Yeah.
I'm using all these words with inverted commas because they're things that you hear. Um, and I think, what we do know is that, children do kind of hit puberty and have like a factory reset of their brain whereby their prefrontal cortex is becoming much more depleted as opposed to their more reptilian brain, which is telling them to do things and take risks. And so, they're going down this huge, steep hill with very, very little brakes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and they're not their reasoning skills become more depleted because of that developmental period where there's an imbalance, an incongruence between, and we do know this, and we can teach schools this, but I think there's something about continual empathy of what we know scientifically with a human who is hard to empathize with because of our other perceptions of them based on how they talk, how they look, and all those kind of things that play into it.
And
um
yeah, thinking that there's really something around because like being a social psychologist, I think what's
mm,
important is addressing things like how ableist our system is, how
mm,
racist our system,
exactly, yeah,
how, like basically the world like has been created for white, male, cisgendered preferably, but also
absolutely, yeah,
female cisgender, right? And then
absolutely,
everything
yeah,
else is not like it's not
yeah,
is that norm. Um, and so of course, when you start reading all the literature around, you know, how many, well, black youth, particularly like the black boys being seen as being more aggressive naturally,
yeah.
all of those things, but it's not really discussed openly.
No, and the statistics point towards all of those things being problematic. And yeah, you're right. It is hard. It's hard to have those discussions as a system because I think we have to acknowledge that is to then have to really change it, isn't it?
Mm.
We've really got to, we're actually, my next book actually is about systemic racism in education. So I'm doing
Oh wow,
Ho
fascinating.
yeah, hopefully, we've had the publishing with Routledge agreed, but we're in the process of writing. I'm co-writing chapters with friends and colleagues.
Amazing. Let
Um,
me know when it's out because I would.
Fingers crossed by Christmas. We're fingers crossed. Well, we'll submit by Christmas, but it's a process after that,
Yeah,
as I'm
yes,
sure
yes,
you
yes,
know, yeah. But
yes.
yeah, it's something, having mixed race children myself, it's something that it's really close to my heart because I do see a difference in treatment. I
Mm.
do see a difference in treatment.
Course. And it's not okay. And it's like,
No.
it's back also to so this is a big driver for me, the whole neurodivergence also.
Yeah.
The really important, like to me, all of those are so important that yeah, being able to acknowledge those and sort of and say it's not okay and we can do so much better.
Yeah. And it's to design the systems and when we're thinking about the idea of belonging, it's absolutely key, isn't it? Because belonging is the opposite of fitting in, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's the opposite of that. It's belonging is being a part of something as who you are,
Well, I was going to ask
unapologetically.
you, actually, like you're giving us a definition as a linguist and someone whose first language is French, not English.
Mm,
I wonder whether we could linger a little bit around definitions and
mm.
like shared common definitions because then it sort of helps. Like I was struck by like what you're sharing reminded me a lot of like DC Ryan's work.
Yes, the motivation.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so for the listeners, could we obviously linger here a little
Yes, yeah,
bit?
yeah, of course, yeah. So self-determination theory, Deci and Ryan. Uh, the idea of self-determination is then linked to motivation. So why, as humans, do we do the things that we do? What are the core constructs of motivation? And when we're talking about motivation, we're thinking about intrinsic motivation. So not, I will do that because I get a lollipop, or do that because, and there are things in the world that we do because we get that instantaneous gratification and reward. But if we want to, I guess, be highly motivated, intrinsically motivated to do something, what Deci and Ryan came up with was the idea of self-determination theory, which has three core constructs. So the first one is autonomy, which we've already talked a bit about. So in order to feel motivated, we have to have choice. We have to have choice in what we are doing, and options that I think go beyond particularly what options we have. For example, in year nine, when we're choosing, it's yeah, exactly. I think it's deceiving the word options, because we might be able to choose what subjects we're doing, but we're not choosing what we're learning. We're not choosing what we're learning, and
Well,
that's
certainly
where,
in the standards current
yeah,
SE, right? Like it sounds like
yeah.
what you were doing in Shanghai is very different.
Yes, it was. It was certainly in the primary years. And I think it's the autonomy is deteriorating because of the results-driven system that we're in as well. Because we're teaching to test, and therefore
Mm.
with very little choice for teachers as well. It's not just about the children, of course. It's about teachers as well, and choice over what they're.
It applies as much to the adult and
Absolutely.
the children. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then the other part of autonomy, of course, is around choices in rules. So you talked a bit about co-creation of environments as part of your PhD. Well, let's think about the rules within schools for a minute, and the purpose and the rationale behind a lot of them that feel so purposeless for a lot of children,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
Yes.
and they
Yes.
give them very little autonomy over, what they wear, who they can sit next to, when they can go to the toilet, when they can eat. Da, 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 da. It's very highly restrictive.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yes.
that's when you think about autonomy being a key factor of motivation. That's quite evident that we're lacking that in the system. And then the second thing is competence. So the idea of being good at something. So my research actually for my doctorate was around teacher confidence in working with children with really high level needs. So I looked after children, and actually what gave people the biggest confidence and sense of confidence was things working. So when I see I'm good at, I do more of. And again, think about the narrative in schools. You're good at this, you're not good at that.
Prophecy, right? It's
Yeah,
like if
yeah, yeah,
you're good at
yeah,
this, you're gonna then go towards what you're good at and
yeah,
ignore
yeah.
the what you're not good at, right?
Yeah, yeah, and that happens with all. I think that happens with all of us to an extent, and
Mm.
probably naturally so, because we do gravitate towards the things that we feel better with, that we feel better at. Well, I think it's just being really careful and mindful that you can change somebody's path and how they feel about themselves in something, and and by one person's definition of good or bad,
Mhm.
like. So the competence is a big key determinant. And then the third one that Desi and Ryan talked about was relatedness. So we do things because of the relationships that we have with people. So I always use a really good example of um, do you know, like when you're perhaps, I don't know, 16, you've just got your first part-time job, and it's like the worst, most lame, boring job that you've perhaps had. But there are two motivators. One of them is a little bit of pocket money. And the second one is usually because the people work that you have a laugh, the
Mm.
relatedness is
Mm.
there. So you turn up, you show up because the people. And I think a lot of us could probably say actually at work or even at school for children, that's a huge motivating factor. But when you look at a child who's excluded, those relationships are often a key factor that's missing. The key relationships, having somebody who sees them, and when I say who sees them, I mean kind of really sees them for who they are and sees their brilliance, sees something different perhaps to what other people see. And I think since Desi and Ryan kind of came up with self-determination theory, I think it's from what I've looked at in recent research is there is a kind of fourth component which is linked to relatedness, but this idea of adding value together.
Mm.
So we're highly motivated when we can work on something, be part of a group, and
Yeah.
work towards a shared purpose.
Yeah.
And I think that's again something that if you think about our education system, there's very, very little
Well,
chance for that. Yeah.
because in a way, one thing we haven't addressed or like discussed is that what for me gets a lot in the way of that is how hyper individualized the system is, right?
And the society in general, right? That goes
Yeah.
beyond
Yeah.
education. I think
Society
it's
is like
yeah.
is literally is so hyper individualized that
Mm,
come and go. So being raised in France in the 70s.
mm,
France is changing, and I think it's changing, is being affected by the neoliberal capitalist system slower than perhaps the UK is.
mm,
But I remember I often sort of say, I've got this vivid memory of as a child going to a market and buying from your local, like the local people and the
mm,
communication
mm,
and this real feel of, and I spent the first sort of like my formative years until about age 7 in a council, what you would call a council estate in a high rise,
mm,
all of those things. And I really remember feeling part of a community and, like feeling like my mum's tire on the motorway, but like burst. And then two lorries stopped and
mm.
one in
Help
front
out.
and the back. And literally they sorted out the tire whilst, I watched. And I probably was
Mm,
like, yeah, 7, 8, I remember.
mm.
There isn't like you think now. There's no way anybody's gonna stop on the motorway to help you repair your tire. And if they stop, you'll probably, as a woman, be really, really worried.
You'd be scared, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's
would.
like,
Yeah.
what are you gonna do, right?
Yeah. 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 And I think so I get asked this question quite a lot, which is really linked to this as well. People ask me all the time, why is mental health on the decline? Why is that? And there's loads of narrative isn't around COVID is one of them, but it was
It was way
reported
before.
to be on the decline before that. And one of the things that I think is probably a huge percentage of component of that is the idea of a lack of a village, a lack of a community. Even same for me growing up, we were a community. We played out. Parents would be looking out for each other's children. I think we were on the way to being individualists then, and now it's a past thing, isn't it? We don't feel safe with things like that. We don't really have that sense of who my neighbour is and who my village is. I've got friends who are raising children with no help at all because they've got no parents near, and you have to buy your village now, don't you? You have to
Yeah,
buy
yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And
back to that capitalist thing, right? And the
exactly,
same with
yeah,
mental health and well-being. So like today I was at uni on a course and I was saying how I really don't want, like we were sort of being asked what we to think about the post PhD. And I said the one thing I don't want my PhD to be is yet another well-being industry thing that I'm gonna flog to people.
yeah,
Not
yeah,
comfortable with that.
yeah, yeah,
Because we have created a well-being industry where
mm,
we literally because and I said and this is where I experience a real friction is that actually as part of well-being to be well our most essential need is a material need, right? Like which is how do I provide you know food, a roof over my head to feel safe and
yeah.
secure.
It's a hierarchy of need. Yeah, we start with the
So it's
yeah, the
really
basics.
difficult, right? Because it's this sort of
Mm,
like we live in a world where we're being told. to be hyper individualistic and
Mm,
yet need a community.
yeah. Yeah.
And we also live in a world where we exchange our most precious resources, our like time and our energy against money, because that's what we've been told to do. So back to belonging then.
Yeah.
How do we
Yeah.
create like an antidote to this of hyper individual?
Yeah. Well, this is why I get excited about schools because schools can be that can be a community. And I think for you, not just as a child, but as a parent, for parents as well, I think that can be a place where it can be a place where you belong. It still has the infrastructure in terms of there being a place for people to go every day, there being people that you see every day, um, people who genuinely care and they want to do the
Mm,
best. I think I get excited about schools being a place where children do belong and don't. I guess for me it's thinking about the marginalization of different groups or different people and their journey, like we're talking about the pipeline to prison. School should be the place where all children feel safe, cared for, looked after, and like they can be whoever they are, unapologetically accepted by that school community. And that's where we need to get to, because when we're thinking about life outcomes, um, that can be the part of it that saves you.
mm.
It can. There's an opportunity there, isn't there? We're just not using it in the right way right now.
No, I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
So, where do you see your work being in terms of that, like working with schools? Because we need so many people
Yeah. I know. I know.
working with
Yeah, I
like
know. This
it's
is the issue.
really
Yeah.
important, right?
Yeah, this is the issue. And I think I'm not going to lie, I'm grappling with this myself at the moment because it's hard. It's huge. It just feels huge, and I think we're battling against, like I say, in a system where we just had the white paper
Mm,
released around
mm.
special educational needs, and I think fundamentally what it's about is about inclusion and about more children being included in ministry, and I agree with the undertones and the
Yeah.
philosophy,
So
right?
so for me, it's this, right? Like,
Yeah,
the,
exactly,
I-
exactly.
yes, yes, yes. Like
100%.
that
Yeah,
education is the most powerful weapon to change the world. So yes to
exactly.
inclusion. But the problem is, I think we need to reclaim that weapon because it's been
We
so.
have, yeah, it's been so weaponized, and I think we're not looking at the right things. We're looking
Mm,
at the wrong things. You don't. What's inclusion? I mean, it's all about children with SEN, but I
mm,
think when we're thinking about inclusion, it's about everybody all the time. And you can't include everybody with the current curriculum. You can't
mm,
include everybody with the way that the system is working in terms of behavior, in terms of exclusion, in terms of process protocols, and all of the things that we're getting wrong. So okay, you can create this little inclusive system as much as you want for children with SEN, but actually the rest of it, a lot of them are being pushed into having special educational needs because
yeah,
that's what we're telling them they are, because they're not
yeah.
fitting into our boxes in the
No,
first place. Well,
exactly.
open
Yeah,
the box, change it,
yeah,
make it bigger,
yeah.
you know?
Well, and also because then it feeds into what you were saying about like doing work. So as an ed psych
Mm,
and working with CAMS, I'm pretty sure because of like the work you're doing, you've probably seen like, I often I get asked by people, why are there more neurodivergent people? Like if
I
they're
do. I get
like,
asked this a lot as well
do you
too.
get,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, all the time. Yes. Yeah.
and I'm like,
Interesting.
well, if you think about how suddenly there was a curb in terms of like why there
Yeah.
are more left-handed people,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
watch that curve is quite a similar one.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
like using that analogy. I think for me, it's like, well, first of all, back to the conversation we were having around if the system is ableist and racist
Yeah.
and all of those things. And, obviously not including neurodivergent young people, if the curriculum was made to train people to work in factories,
Yeah, exactly. And to
Like,
conform and to comply and to stand
exactly,
in line and don't ask questions. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Then to me, it's never gonna work, right?
No, exactly. Yeah. We have to change the fundamentals of, so there's for me there's education and then there's school.
Agree.
And school is different
Yeah,
to what I see as being education, I think.
agree.
And education has the power to change the world right now. School doesn't. And that's where we need
Mm,
to change the boundary and the border. But I think my next project, back to your question about what's next, my next project, I'm obviously writing another book, but then what I'd really like to do, and this is kind of why I put some stuff out on LinkedIn, which is kind of where you picked it up from the other day. I'm going to work locally. What I'd like to do is work locally with, and I've got some schools, great schools. We have great schools in Nottingham, some secondary schools that are interested in working on a project of how they embed belonging within the system that we're working in at the moment. Obviously, there's bigger things that need to change, but how
mm,
can we make some positive change and embed strategies that are manageable, tangible,
mm.
workable, implementable
Yeah.
right
Mm.
now.
Yeah.
So we're going to do some whole school belonging measurement, and then we're going to do
Amazing.
some perhaps focus group measurement, perhaps the
Yeah.
more marginalized children, look at their sense of belonging and how we can then, instead of putting behavior plans in place, for example, or I've used, well, but let's do a belonging plan. Let's see how we can increase, how can we pour into these children as much as we possibly can, and what change do we then create through that? So I'm
Mm.
hoping to do that to do that locally. And if anyone's listening, they want to give some time to doing it in a couple of schools wherever they live, or amazing, because if we could get evidence and build up a picture
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
some of these
Also,
things working and being effective
yeah, people,
across a bigger sample, that would be amazing.
yeah, you're happy for people to contact you if they're
Definitely.
interested.
Yeah,
Yeah,
please do.
amazing.
Yeah.
And I would love to for us to keep the conversation going because I think there's a lot
Yeah,
of synergy between like what we're doing and things.
definitely. Yeah.
Um, I think for me, one thing, Maddie, I don't know whether you'll agree with that or not, but I'm seeing more and more, like through my PhD, through the research and like the last 12 years, is so like you, I feel the friction and the tension because there's this great big system that needs change.
Mm,
And then like there's the local and like the people
mm,
like where we are. And that sort of like locus of control versus like the locus of concern, right? Like lots of these things.
yeah.
Um, but I also think that sometimes we're overthinking it because of the
Mm,
knowledge. And you said some things, right? Like people, like the young people, like a school can be a place where young people feel, to me, I would say, feel seen, heard, and held, right? Like where
yeah.
that's so simple. Like those things don't take much money. When you look at how much an EHCP
Hmm.
and like how much they throw, like my eldest was home educated for 3 years
Okay.
post-COVID. So I've been and I helped co-create a teenage hub for young people who couldn't be in school
Amazing.
in
Okay.
Bristol. So I've encountered a lot of young people who had EHCPs. You're talking £20,000 at their disposal for that. Like this is the sum of money that people may not realize is being given to one individual.
Yeah.
And actually, the feedback once they'd come to us and they've re-entered the system post of 16 and doing something, all they said is that you made me feel seen, heard, and held. And we definitely didn't need 20 grand to do that.
Agreed. Yeah. 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 It is. So yeah, it could all be so simple, but we do make it
Right?
very
It's
hard.
so
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so what is it that is making it so
Yeah. I guess it's like you say, it's the friction, isn't it, between I think one of the key things, seen, held, and heard, I think, in the level of need. That's the other thing, because
Mm.
the level of need is greater for whatever reason. We could probably have another podcast about that. But the I think the level of need and the enormity, particularly in our secondary schools, I
Mm.
think the resourcing to make a child feel seen, held, and heard feels for staff really challenging. I think it does because I think
Yeah. Because they're
children
not
walking in,
trained.
then
They're not
and
trained.
they're in these enormous environments, aren't
Yeah.
they?
Mm.
Huge. They're huge. So I go into some secondary schools and I'm like, I'm a bit scared here. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it feels
Yeah. It's a
challenging, it's
factory.
busy and it's
Massive.
loud. They're
Yeah.
huge
Yeah.
places.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to feel seen and held and heard in that environment when you've got think about things like some have a 2 week timetable. So that means that you're in a class of 30. And for some teachers, they'll only see you once every 2 weeks, and they'll only see you for 6 weeks, and then you'll switch or rotate into another teacher. So building a relationship, seeing you, holding you, hearing you in that's hard. That's really hard for a teacher
Not
to
possible.
do that. All
Yeah.
they can do is manage in that moment the challenging behavior
Yeah. Yeah.
by red,
Yeah.
green, and all the things that
Yeah.
we know are,
Yeah. Yeah.
are
Yeah. Yeah.
extrinsic motivators that really
Yeah.
don't work for the majority
No.
of people. So
No. Yeah.
it's the overwhelm, isn't it? It's the
Mm.
overwhelm in the system we've created that I think it's harder than we might imagine to create that sense of being seen, held, and heard in our children with additional needs or trauma or with challenging home lives. They need that a lot more. They need a lot more pouring into, and I think then I think people feel able to, which is sad, but it's
And it's so what I'm hearing in that is also something around like the as a recovering teacher.
mm,
I really feel like I feel really strongly. The reason I'm doing my PhD in a
mm,
state school is because, I do agree with Nelson Mandela. I do think that education is the most powerful, and I wouldn't say a weapon because I think weapon is such a, maybe I would choose a different word. I understand why he said that because it has been weaponized, but it's such a powerful like space holder to just sort of enable like to change the world. Um, but if a teacher is also feeling themselves stressed out,
mm,
and because there's also in that we haven't discussed it, but the reason like Ball's work, I don't know if you're familiar with Stephen Ball's work around performativity and like the teachers,
mm.
all the things that are being imposed on them, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it's so much. And I think, when you think about, again, seeing, held, and heard, if you're a teacher who the level of pressure that you might be under on any given day, and then a child comes into your classroom and all you see is them being challenging, difficult, all of those, if your cup is already bubbling over, you can quite easily see how it then explodes, can't you? And then it leads to situations where children end up excluded or, you
yeah.
know, and when you think about it like that and the day-to-day, the intricacies of stress and the things that are happening within those interactions, those micro interactions, it's easy to see how we've got to where we've got to as well, because I think the more stressed people feel about behavior, particularly in schools, the harder we then decide, right, we'll tighten this rule because that will
Yeah,
help, you
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You become
It's the
even more
quicker fix.
tightening the
Yeah,
control, right? Because
yeah,
it's also, and also because in a way, the system is very, um, it comes back from like the era where children were seen but not heard, and so like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
hmm. So,
yeah.
is there a question I haven't asked you, Maddie, that you sitting here thinking, "Oh, I so wish Fabian had asked me this question."
No, I don't think so. I feel like we've covered so much in a in a space of time.
In an hour, yes.
I just looked and it's 4 o'clock. four
And
o'clock
it's
already. I don't know how we've
amazing.
managed that. That was amazing.
Um,
Um,
so, well, I hope we can sort of like stay in touch because I
I'd
would
love to.
absolutely love to continue. So I view my gift in this tiny little like education sort of system as
Mm,
a, um I haven't got it here, or maybe I have, but I've got a tablet on there. My friend sort of given me a little sticker that says "powered by fungi,"
Okay.
and I love like the mycelial sort of like shining a
Yeah.
light on like people like you and what's
Oh,
done. Because I think like belonging will look different depending on where you are and who you are, right? Um,
yeah. I mean, a lot of it is down to interpretation of what that even means as well, isn't it?
mm,
And for every organization, it will, and by nature, have to look different as well.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
it's yeah, it's a big, it's a word that's being used a lot as well, I think, at the minute, and I think it's also noticing that because I think all of a sudden, because of it, I think at the attendance crisis, again, inverted commas,
mm,
people are talking more about, well, why, and
yeah,
actually that's where this kind of word belonging. I mean, we've been talking about it in psychology for a lot longer than what it's been, on LinkedIn, for example, haven't we? But um and we've known the importance of it, but I think it's kind of just coming into what you would call kind of the mainstream as an idea, and I think it's just important um to recognize that this is something that we want to do because it's the right thing to do, not because it's a word that's like the wellbeing initiatives, I guess you were talking about, like
yeah, 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 yeah. And
it's
that is not weaponized again
it's
as a way
exactly
to,
exactly
yeah,
yeah
yeah, yeah,
yeah yeah
completely agree.
yeah.
Um,
It's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you so much. I've
no,
really enjoyed
no.
meeting. I want to keep up to date with your PhD as well and what you're up
Yeah,
to. That
will
would
do.
be really
Yeah, yeah,
cool.
will do.
Yeah.
I wonder whether you want to leave us with like, is there one thing you're taking from this imperfectly perfect conversation, or or you want to leave us with? Um,
My it's the Mandela quote, isn't it? I think I forget that. I forget sometimes the bigger picture. I think anyone who's working in education, I think anyone who is kind of fighting that, the cause for change, the cause for the need to reimagine, do things differently, I think is remembering that the reason that we're doing that is because how powerful this can be for people's lives in terms of change.
mm,
But it's doing that for the better, isn't it? Rather than for what it feels like, I guess, at the moment, which
yeah.
is, controlling power.
Mm. And I hope this little sort of hour together has
Mm.
helped you also celebrate how much of a contribution your work is doing to that, because we don't often do that either. So perhaps my gift to you
Yeah,
is
yeah, it is a gift, and I tell
be
you what, it's
cool.
also yeah,
Yeah.
it's also reinvigorated me a little bit. I think I've yeah, I think sometimes you're working, you're going along, aren't you? And you kind of, I am at a bit of a crossroads at the moment, and I'm thinking about what's next. And I think this conversation has actually really helped me to reignite what is really important to me. So thank you.
All
Yeah,
right. Well,
thank
I'm
you.
glad, and
Mm,
I really would like this conversation to really celebrate you, Maddie, because I reached out to you because I was really impressed by what I saw on LinkedIn. And
thank you.
LinkedIn can be a place where it's like, look at
Yeah,
me and stuff.
yeah,
But yeah, so I'm really glad I could sort of give you that space, and hopefully that'll help you sort of like in terms of the amazing
yeah.
work you're doing. So thank
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I do appreciate it. Thank you. Please keep in touch.
Yeah, will do.
All right.
Thank you, and see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.